the 1-4. First hit whiff, second hit tornadoes. Must be nice.
Look at the dance. It's so beautiful.
Bro, he throw that button whenever he feel like there's a problem. That's fine. Ooh, his shadow turned it around, try to go for an immediate button instead of turning himself around into blockable safety. And there goes P-Ling taking game 1.
And crazy stuff from P-Ling, hitting Shadow 20C with the bing bing, taking that first game. Uh-oh, we're getting closer. Cosmico updating us. Rallarina eliminates Suzoru 2-1, and Trizzy taking out Fate's Tone 2-1.
Ooh.
You're getting so much closer.
I'm excited. I'm excited. That's unfortunate for Tone after getting his sign on for Fate and falling just short of top 8. But 312 people in the bracket. That's a hard bracket to get to top 8 in. That's hard.
It is tough, man. That is. Listen, a lot of people could watch this and be like, "Oh, I could have done this easy." How about you get in next time and see if you could easily do it?
I'm saying. All right, now I'm not sure who benefits from this one. I feel like Shadow can benefit a lot from not having his back to the wall, because I feel like a lot of the damage that hurt him was those wall pressures, those wall situations versus P-Ling Lydia.
I think if Shadow decides to just just poke away, he could definitely win this matchup on the stage.
I don't know, man. When Lydia starts, running up those medals, running up those stance transitions, that stance pressures, she can blow you up quick.
She can, but she can blow you up a lot quicker at the wall. She has to work to the wall to get, to get to that point on this stage. Not saying that her non-wall pressure game is like her biggest thing, but I feel like that's what favors her more.
See that beautiful back dash. Oh, but that's a hello. There's a second hit. There's a second hit. It's like a really slow hell sweep, and the low comes first, and then the rest of it comes. So that's why. Damn shame.
Zafina got hit by the whiff of the leg. That's the air of the leg. Oh, sit down, lady. Sit down.
That's a lot of damage coming at P-Ling. Luckily, we're getting 13 health back.
And I think that counted as a float as well.
Don't ask how did that hit. I explained to you how that hit. Oh my god. Thought you were gonna be able to get a pickup. What in the tornado? Why did that tornado?
Yeah, that's crazy. Why do people backflip?
Backflip is really easy to get out of there. But, sometimes just get yourself a little bit of up in your backdash is what it is. Shadow 20Z not allowing P-Ling to do that small second, finding the gaps.
Shadow Killing Heat also has the install, but so does P-Ling. Only about 3 to 4 more hits for Shadow 20Z. Take another round on P-Ling, but P-Ling not letting up with the heat. Although it's gone now, 3 medals that he got.
Oh my god, the low crushes from P-Ling tonight versus Shadow have been absolutely on point.
Umaga, man, was so damn good. And Jeff says this all the time. Like, that's probably his favorite rival of all
it's
time
great.
that he worked with. They had so many good, you know, that moment where Jeff slides down the railing of the stairs.
Coolest
It is the
clothesline.
like that is the coolest thing ever, right?
Coolest clothesline of all time.
I mean, it's just the epitome of cool ass Jeff Hardy.
Did you plan that out?
I did. It was a Willow spot. You know, my alter Nero Willow. I used to do things like that. But yeah, it was a Willow spot I used to do on the Indies whenever I would see a nice railing on the stairwell.
Umaga, man, was so damn good. And Jeff says this all the time. Like, that's probably his favorite rival.
You were 10 years old when your father passed away?
I was 9 years old.
9 years old.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
What's the thing you remember most about your dad?
You're about to hear 3 mysteries that have been solved by viewers just like you, and a 4th that is currently unsolved and desperately needs your help. This is what they did on the show Unsolved Mysteries. They put unsolved cases in front of as many eyes as possible in hopes that someone watching knew something that could blow the case wide open. And as you'll see, it worked. That's why at the end of the video, we'll be discussing one new case that is currently ongoing and needs one final clue, one final piece of information before it can be solved. Perhaps someone watching can help. Perhaps that person could be you. It was a quiet Easter Sunday in 1990. Ray and Marie Thornton were out on their usual drive along Snow Prairie Road, a rural highway about 12 miles outside of Coldwater, Michigan. But their quiet routine was shattered when, in the rearview mirror, they noticed a speeding van approaching them from behind. It closed the distance within moments and shot past their car. "Geez, he's in a hurry," Marie said, making a joke out of the van's license plate that started with GZ. They didn't think much of it until they saw the van again a few miles later, this time parked near an abandoned schoolhouse. As they passed, Marie looked over and froze. She caught sight of the driver, carrying what looked like a blood-stained sheet toward the back of the building. They had no idea what they'd just seen, but they knew it was bad. When Ray checked the mirror again, the van was back, right behind them again, closing in fast. Behind the wheel of the white van was a man named Dennis Depew. He was married to a woman named Marilyn, a well-respected high school counselor in Coldwater, Michigan. The couple had 3 children, 2 girls and a boy. From the outside, they seemed like an ordinary, well-off family, but behind closed doors, things were falling apart. Dennis became increasingly bitter and distant, convinced that Marilyn was turning the children against him. Marilyn, tired of feeling unhappy, filed for divorce in 1989 after 18 years of marriage. Following the separation, Dennis was given limited visitation with the kids, who often refused to see him. Marilyn told her attorney that Dennis continued to try and control nearly every aspect of her life. Even though he made no claim on the family home, he kept using a small office space in the garage. Marilyn eventually changed the locks, but even that wasn't enough. One day, she walked into her living room and found Dennis just sitting there on the couch. Tensions continued to escalate for months until Easter Sunday, 1990. Dennis arrived to pick up his children, but his son Scott was reluctant to go with him, and his daughter Julie flat out refused. Marilyn stepped in, trying to calm the situation, but Dennis's anger only grew. He grabbed her, shouting. In the chaos, he pushed Marilyn down the basement stairs of the house. As their children looked on, terrified, he continued to attack her at the bottom of the staircase. Jennifer, the eldest daughter, immediately ran to the neighbors to call police. Seeing this, Dennis made a sudden decision. He carried the badly injured Marilyn to his van, telling the children he was taking her to the hospital. Within minutes, a police search for both Dennis and Marilyn was underway. The next time Dennis and his van were spotted was when he passed the Thorntons on Snow Prairie Road and stopped at the abandoned schoolhouse. Now he was driving behind them again, but this time, he wasn't passing. Instead, he just menacingly rode their bumper for the next 2 miles. The couple couldn't shake the feeling that they had witnessed a crime in progress and decided that they needed to report the man to the police. They knew the first 2 letters of his license plate, GZ, because of their joke from earlier, but couldn't remember the rest. And since front license plates are not required in the state of Michigan, they would need to get behind his vehicle if they wanted to see the license plate. With quick thinking, they swerved off the highway onto a dirt road so they could turn their car around, maybe to catch a glimpse of the license plate again. When they came back to the highway, they saw that the van had pulled over. As they got closer, they realized what he was doing, changing the license plate. The passenger door was open, and inside, they caught a glimpse of what seemed to be blood smeared across the door and interior. Realizing that getting the license plate was not an option, the Thorntons decided to instead speed back toward the abandoned school. There, they discovered the blood-soaked sheet, partially shoved into an animal hole in the ground near the building. They immediately contacted the police to report what they'd found. If this sequence of events with the van sounded at all familiar, it might be because the opening scenes of both the original 2001 Jeepers Creepers film and its 2022 reboot were inspired by the true events that Ray and Mary Thornton experienced that day. When the forensic team sealed off the abandoned schoolhouse, they determined that the tire tracks matched those on DePue's van, and the blood on the sheet was Marilyn's. The evidence left little doubt. The hunt for the missing couple had now turned into a murder case. Marilyn's body was later discovered on a deserted road, roughly halfway between her home and the schoolhouse. The official cause of death was a single gunshot wound to the back of the head. As police searched for Dennis, he began sending bizarre letters to family and friends. In the 17 letters postmarked from Virginia, Iowa, and Oklahoma, he blamed everyone but himself for what happened. In one instance, he mailed an 11-page letter along with copies of divorce documents. In it, Dennis writes in third person, claiming that Marilyn chose to throw Dennis over the fence and stay on her side of the fence with the children, house, furniture, and make Dennis pay college expenses. Dennis got very, very hurt when Marilyn threw Dennis over the fence. He also included what he referred to as interesting thoughts, such as an eye for an eye, a life for a life. For months, DePue stayed one step ahead, successfully managing to evade capture. Authorities had no idea where he disappeared to, but everything changed when his case aired on national television. On March 20th, 1991, the TV show Unsolved Mysteries featured the DePue case. During the broadcast, a woman named Linda Blizzard in Dallas, Texas, came home to something unusual. Her boyfriend, Hank Queen, had parked his van outside of the garage, which was very unusual for him to do. When she walked in, she found him rushing around the house, packing hurriedly. He said he'd gotten a call that his mother had suffered a stroke and that he had to leave immediately. Linda helped him gather a few things, packed some food for the road, and gave him a hug goodbye. Later, she recalled feeling an odd sense that this might be the last time she saw him. She'd met Hank 5 months ago at a club on Halloween. By December, he was living with her, but both Linda and her friend Barbara Harris had their doubts. Hank never spoke about his past or his family, and when he did leave the house, which was rare, he would wear dark sunglasses no matter the time of day. The two women often discussed how little they really knew about him. Linda even at one point hired a private investigator to find out more about his past, but nothing came up. While Linda was saying her goodbyes to Hank, her friend Barbara was at her house busy watching Unsolved Mysteries. When she saw Hank's face on the screen, she realized the truth. He wasn't Hank Queen. He was Dennis DePue, a wanted murderer. Shocked, Barbara first called Linda to warn her about what she'd seen. Then, she called the show's tip line and gave authorities the license plate number of his van. Meanwhile, Dennis drove 4 frantic hours through the state of Louisiana towards Mississippi. Louisiana state troopers eventually spotted his van and initiated a 15-mile high-speed chase, while authorities across the border, alerted by the FBI, prepared to intercept. When Dennis barreled through a Mississippi roadblock, deputies opened fire, blowing out his rear tires. Even then, he kept going, exchanging gunfire with officers and attempting to ram their vehicles. The pursuit finally ended around 4 a.m. when officers forced the van to a stop. As they approached, they found Dennis DePue dead inside, his revolver still in his hand. The terror was over, but for the DePue children, the loss was unimaginable. And while his crimes would later inspire the opening of Jeepers Creepers, the real horror stayed with Ray and Marie Thornton far longer than any movie scene ever could. Depew's case ended in tragedy, but at least all questions had answers. This is not always the case. For instance, 2 years later in Wisconsin, a woman was suddenly thrust into a mystery of her own that, even when it was solved, left more questions than answers. On August 28, 1993, Craig Williamson left his Wapaka County fish farm for a business trip to Colorado. As he drove down the driveway, he waved goodbye to his wife, Christine Reinhardt. 2 days later, on the night of August 30th, Craig called home from his room at the Super 8 Motel in Colorado Springs. He told Christine he was about to return his rental car and asked her to give him a wake-up call at 5:30 the next morning. But when Craig didn't answer the phone the following day, Christine immediately got worried. Craig had been recovering from a concussion for the past few weeks, and he was still dealing with headaches and blurred vision, making his sudden silence particularly alarming. When police checked his motel room the next day on August 31st, they found no signs of struggle. It seemed the bed hadn't been slept in, and his belongings were still there in the room. Well, most of them. Within 24 hours, 2 of Craig's credit cards were found, oddly placed on a bread shelf at a grocery store in El Paso, Texas, near the Mexican border, 568 miles from Colorado Springs. By the next day, Craig Williamson was officially listed as a missing person. 2 weeks later, his rental car was found abandoned in a residential neighborhood in Juarez, Mexico. Investigators considered 2 possibilities. Craig was murdered, or he disappeared intentionally to Mexico. Christine refused to believe either. To her, there was no evidence that Craig had simply walked out of her life, or that he was dead. Just a few years back, on October 7, 1990, 46-year-old Craig Williamson and 41-year-old Christine Reinhardt were married at Lake Tahoe. Soon after, they bought land in Christine's home state of Wisconsin and transformed an old farm into a tilapia business, selling the fish to markets and restaurants across the country. I had looked for him for so long. I walked into his life and he walked into mine. When we found each other, there was no doubt in either of our minds, Christina told a local newspaper. Unable to stand by while the love of her life was inexplicably lost, she took matters into her own hands. She first took a trip to the motel where Craig had last stayed to check it out for herself, but found no clues there. While the investigators focused on Texas and Mexico, Christine was convinced he was somewhere closer. Through her persistent efforts, her husband's story gained media attention, and soon a retired nurse from Montana, Judy Inman, came forward with information. Just 2 weeks after Craig disappeared, while traveling on a train bound for Denver via Portland, Judy claimed she had seen a man who looked like the missing middle-aged man. He talked about fish, appeared confused and disoriented, and looked as though he'd been wearing the same clothes for days. Christine felt certain that the man Judy saw was her husband. Determined to follow this lead, she replicated Judy's train journey from Whitefish, Montana to Portland, Oregon, photographing every train station along the way. On December 26, 1993, she met with Judy to show her the photos. Judy pointed to the station where she'd seen the man get off the train, Wishram, Washington, near the Oregon border. Craig's son traveled to the area, putting up missing person flyers, but no new leads surfaced. Months passed with no new clues, but Christine's determination never wavered. Her hope was renewed when the TV show Unsolved Mysteries featured Craig's case. The segment aired on May 25, 1994, and was rerun 8 times, generating more than 100 tips that were investigated by the El Paso County Sheriff's Office. Then, in 1995, 2 years after the disappearance, an unexpected turn of events occurred. While watching a rerun of the episode, one man recognized Craig Williamson, and that man was Craig Williamson himself. According to Craig, he had been mugged in Colorado, suffered a concussion, and lost his memory. His credit cards and vehicle had been stolen, and he woke up in a hospital wearing a wristband with the name Ron. From there, he wandered across the U.S., traveling on buses and trains before eventually settling in Key West, Florida. There, he got a job at a marina and had been working there for the past 9 months. Bob Ming, who had hired him the previous October, said Craig introduced himself as Craig Ron Williamson, using Ron instead of his true middle name, Dwight. Bob complimented Williamson, saying he had been a good worker, but toward the end, he claimed to have begun suffering from headaches and told stories of being attacked and lost in the desert for 2 weeks. When Craig finally contacted Christine, he admitted he didn't remember her or his family. Nothing they tried could bring those memories back. The couple met up again, but sadly eventually divorced. Investigators, however, were skeptical of Craig's amnesia. In the abandoned rental car, they found whiskers from his beard that had been cut with scissors. They also noted that Craig had $2,500 in cash when he disappeared, leading them to suspect he may have staged his disappearance to escape financial pressure. The couple had invested everything they had into the fish farm and borrowed another $400,000. Detectives also pointed out that Craig had no tanks, no fish food, no coolers, nothing aboard his bus to suggest he was on a genuine fish run when he traveled to Colorado. It's easy to see why investigators had so many questions, but why connect back with his wife? Why not just disappear forever and stick to the story of amnesia? Did guilt catch up to him, pushed by Christine's unwavering search? Or had he truly forgotten who he was? Some mysteries, when solved, leave us with questions that may never have answers. But then, there are other cases that seem clear-cut and solved at first, but turn out to be far more complicated than anyone could imagine. September 1989. Patricia Stallings was standing in front of her house in Jefferson County, Missouri, when officers placed her under arrest. The charge? Murdering her infant son, Ryan. Just 3 months earlier, Patricia and her husband, David Stallings, had brought their 3-month-old baby to the hospital. Ryan had been refusing to eat and was vomiting violently. From birth, Ryan had suffered from chronic gastric distress, so at first, doctors suspected another routine bout of illness. Ryan recovered, but after a series of tests, the results left the medical team stunned. The tests revealed unusually high levels of ethylene glycol in his blood, the main ingredient in antifreeze. To the hospital staff, it pointed to only one conclusion: Ryan was deliberately poisoned. Authorities stepped in immediately, separating David and Patricia for questioning. Investigators plainly stated to each parent individually that they knew one of them had poisoned their son, and began probing for cracks, arguments at home, jealousy, resentment. David was told Patricia had failed her lie detector test. The truth? It was inconclusive. But that single claim was enough to make him think twice. "It was just for a second," he said. "Then my senses came back, and I said, they're crazy." After 12 days in the hospital, baby Ryan was released, not to his parents, but to the Child Protective Services. For over a month, Patricia and David were allowed only a single 1-hour supervised visit with their son each week. During the 6th visit, Patricia was briefly left alone with Ryan and a bottle of formula prepared by his foster mother. Then, with others present, she fed him the bottle. 4 days later, Ryan was hospitalized again, with the same symptoms and same diagnosis. This time, the police came to the Stallings home and placed Patricia under arrest for assault. While she was waiting in jail, tragedy struck. Ryan passed away on September 7th, 1989. Soon after, Patricia was charged with first-degree murder and held without bail. She was not allowed to attend her son's funeral. With Patricia in jail, David tried to raise money for an attorney. Then, in October, a month after Ryan's death, they discovered that Patricia was 4 months pregnant. Her second son, David Jr., DJ, was born in February 1990 and was immediately placed into foster care, while Patricia awaited her trial. Within 2 weeks, she learned that DJ had been rushed to Children's Hospital with the same symptoms that had killed Ryan and put her in jail. But this time, DJ was diagnosed with a rare genetic disorder called methylmalonic acidemia, or MMA. The Stallings argued that Ryan may have suffered from the same disease, and so did their new attorney, Eric Rathbone. However, during Patricia's 3-day trial in January 1991, the similarities between Ryan's and DJ's illnesses were never introduced to the court. Rathbone failed to bring in any expert medical witnesses who could challenge the prosecution's narrative. Meanwhile, prosecutor George McElroy built a persuasive case. Police and social workers testified that Patricia showed little emotion upon being informed of Ryan's death. Investigators also pointed to a bottle of antifreeze found at the Stallings home. According to the prosecution, nothing else could explain the ethylene glycol detected in Ryan's blood. After 10 hours of deliberations, the jury found Patricia Stallings guilty of first-degree murder. She was sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. What the jury didn't know was that Dr. Christopher Long, head of St. Louis University's toxicology lab, and one of the doctors who initially confirmed the presence of ethylene glycol, had quietly shared a small sample of Ryan's blood with a Dr. James Shoemaker. Dr. Shoemaker had recently set up a genetic testing lab at the university and ran a test designed to detect MMA. On April 21, 1990, His results strongly suggested that Ryan Stallings had indeed suffered from MMA. He reported his findings with Dr. Long, and the results sparked debate among the university's senior staff. Many agreed Ryan likely had MMA, but they still believed he had been poisoned. He had also relayed them to Patricia's defense attorney, Rathbone, but believed that the information he received was incomplete and dismissed Shoemaker's findings, assuming his testimony would hurt rather than help Patricia's case. Methylmalonic acidemia, or MMA, is a rare genetic disorder which prevents the body from properly breaking down certain proteins and fats. As a result, toxic substances build up in the body, causing illness, lethargy, and breathing problems. Even after the second son DJ's confirmed diagnosis, prosecutors insisted MMA couldn't explain the ethylene glycol found in Ryan's blood, and Patricia was denied a retrial. But everything changed in 1991 when the Stallings story reached a national audience. An episode of Unsolved Mysteries featured her case, and it sparked a breakthrough. Dr. William S. Sly, professor and chairman of the Department of Biochemistry and Molecular Biology at St. Louis University, happened to be watching the Unsolved Mysteries episode about Patricia Stallings. What struck him was that no other tests had been performed on Ryan's blood to confirm the poisoning diagnosis. Dr. Sly, alongside Dr. James Shoemaker, decided to conduct these additional tests themselves. The result led them to contact prosecutor George McElroy with a stunning revelation. They had reached 3 critical conclusions. First, the results showed abnormal elevations of organic acids in Ryan's blood that, in Dr. Sly's words, make the diagnosis of MMA virtually certain. Second, the tests confirmed the absence of ethylene glycol in the samples. Third, they found that one of the compounds produced by Ryan's disease, propionic acid, could easily be mistaken for ethylene glycol in standard tests. While prosecutor McElroy was intrigued, he wasn't fully convinced Patricia was innocent. It wasn't until he consulted another expert, Dr. Piero Rinaldo, a respected geneticist, that his perspective began to shift. Together, they went over the raw data and found that much of the hospital's original conclusion simply wasn't supported by the evidence. Dr. Rinaldo was highly critical of the initial hospital tests and the treatment Ryan received. His independent testing found no evidence of ethylene glycol on the baby's bottle. He argued that the treatments administered, including fasting and the use of ethanol, which is standard for antifreeze poisoning, were dangerous and inappropriate for a child suffering from MMA. Despite Dr. Rinaldo's findings, prosecutor George McElroy still had one lingering question. What about crystals that were found during Ryan's autopsy? Crystals often associated with ethylene glycol poisoning. Rinaldo explained that there was a strong likelihood these crystals had formed as a direct result of the ethanol drip administered at the hospital during Ryan's treatment for the suspected poisoning. That was enough to change McElroy's mind and ask the judge to drop all charges against Patricia Stallings. After being released from prison, she finally got to spend time with her second son, DJ, knowing that because of his illness, every moment spent with him was going to be precious. The Stallings family filed a medical malpractice and wrongful death lawsuit against the hospital and several doctors. The case was eventually settled for an undisclosed amount. David and Patricia eventually divorced, and their son David Jr. passed away in 2013 at the young age of 23. David also passed away in 2019 after a long illness. Even though David Jr. passed away far too young, his parents were at least given the chance to spend precious time with him. It was a small mercy after their brutal fight against the medical and legal systems that had nearly torn their family apart. We've covered 3 stories that were solved because the right people saw them when they aired on Unsolved Mysteries all those years ago. But this next one is different. It's a recent case that's still unsolved. But maybe it just needs the right set of eyes. Maybe you have the piece of information that could finally solve this mystery. June 23rd, 2021. Buckeye, Arizona. After finishing his work for the day, 24-year-old Daniel Robinson got into his blue 2017 Jeep Renegade and drove away from his job site near Sun Valley Parkway and Cactus Road. Witnesses report that he headed west, deeper into the desert, but that was the last time anyone saw him. Hours later, the Robinson family was informed that Daniel was missing. His father, David Robinson, immediately set out on a 2,000-mile drive from South Carolina to Arizona, determined to find his son. Daniel's older brother, David Colley Robinson, said the situation felt immediately wrong. He's not one to just up and leave just because. It just struck us as weird in the moment because there's really no explanation. But David did recall that in the evenings leading up to his disappearance, Daniel had been acting differently, taking sudden trips and not seeming like himself. When Daniel vanished, the search began almost immediately. Police reported that he was last seen in the desert west of Sun Valley Parkway, just north of Cactus Road. Buckeye Police, along with the Phoenix Firebird helicopter unit, scoured the area but found no sign of Daniel or his Jeep. Detectives tried to track his phone but couldn't get a signal. Either the phone was off or out of range. His call record showed no texts or calls after leaving the site. While they acknowledged he had been acting strangely, police found no evidence suggesting Daniel wanted to harm himself or run away. The Arizona Civil Air Patrol joined the effort, conducting an extensive ground and aerial search. They mapped out the area around his job site and reviewed aerial photos and data to determine where further searches might be needed. Hospitals across the valley were checked, and Daniel was entered into the National Missing Persons Database. Still, there was no trace. Then, on July 19th, nearly a month after Daniel went missing, police were alerted by a rancher who had discovered Daniel's Jeep on his property, roughly 4 miles from the job site where he was last seen. The vehicle appeared to have rolled into a ravine and landed on its side. The driver's side window was shattered, the front windshield was cracked, and the airbags had deployed. Initial evidence suggested Daniel had been wearing his seatbelt at the time of the crash. Just a few feet from the vehicle, investigators found Daniel's clothes, boots, and safety vest scattered on the ground. His phone, keys, and wallet were also recovered at the scene, but there was no sign of Daniel. Following the discovery, authorities launched an extensive ground search, enlisting the Department of Public Safety's Rangers helicopters and Maricopa County Sheriff's Office and search and rescue dogs. In late July 2021, skeletal remains were discovered by a woman south of where Daniel's Jeep was found. Almost immediately, speculation spread online that they might belong to Daniel Robinson. Soon after, testing proved they do not belong to him. Then, in November that same year, another set of human remains were found. But again, they were not his. Despite the troubling evidence, police concluded there were no signs of foul play. Feeling that the police weren't doing enough, David Robinson decided to take matters into his own hands. He hired a private investigator and pushed for a deeper look into the evidence. David claimed that no forensic work had been done on Daniel's Jeep until he raised his concerns. Only then did authorities agree to swab the vehicle for fingerprints. Once the official investigation wrapped, David's own forensic team began combing through Daniel's phone, computer, and anything else that could hold a clue. The Robinson family remained convinced that the narrative police were presenting, that Daniel simply walked off on his own, didn't add up. Private investigator Jeff McGrath shared their doubts. When he first saw the Jeep, he immediately noticed that the damage didn't match the terrain or the way the vehicle had landed. According to the collision report, the Jeep had been involved in a rollover crash, but the data from the car's internal system revealed something odd. The vehicle had actually accelerated right before the impact, almost as if the driver had been trying to climb out of the ravine. Then came a series of troubling anomalies. After the crash, the Jeep's system showed an additional 46 ignition cycles, and there was an unexpected 11-mile discrepancy. In September 2023, McGrath revealed that he had found red paint transfer on the vehicle, suggesting a prior collision before it ended up in the ravine. To him, it raised a disturbing possibility that the crash scene had been staged by someone. This theory aligned with the account of the rancher. He had found the Jeep a month after Daniel had gone missing and claims that the Jeep had not been there when he was at the ravine searching for cattle 2 days prior. And according to Daniel's father and McGrath, the questions don't stop there. The private investigator noted that the Jeep's system logged a collision at around 1 p.m., nearly 4 hours after Daniel was last seen. The location of the vehicle was only 4 miles from the work site. What happened during that time gap? Where did Daniel go during those missing hours? Even the airbag deployment raised eyebrows. Both airbags had gone off, even though it's presumed Daniel was the only person in the car. Normally, an airbag-controlled unit considers the presence of a passenger before deploying the second airbag. However, it should be noted that if something heavy had been on the passenger's seat, like gear or a bag, it might have triggered the sensor, causing both airbags to deploy. The 11-mile discrepancy became a source of intense speculation. On the Jeep Garage forum, one user reported a 620-mile mismatch after a long trip. The issue turned out to be caused by using larger-than-standard tires. Since both the dashboard and the onboard system use the same incorrect data, small miscalculations accumulate over time, making the mileage appear off. Could Daniel's Jeep have had a similar calibration issue? Maybe. A tire change or computer error might account for the extra 11 miles shown after the crash, but this explanation doesn't fit with the rancher's testimony. Was the Jeep physically moved at some point during the month Daniel was missing? That possibility haunted the Robinson family, especially since the Jeep was found just 4 miles from where Daniel was last seen, in a spot authorities had supposedly already searched. McGrath uncovered yet another unsettling detail. Someone other than law enforcement had reportedly gone through Daniel's apartment after his disappearance, digging through his closet and examining files on his computer. It's important to note that the Buckeye police didn't officially search Daniel's apartment until July 6th, 13 days after he vanished. Whoever had been there had plenty of time to look through his belongings unnoticed. Now, 4 years have passed, and Daniel Robinson is still missing. And so many lingering questions remain. This year in April, another search effort was organized, bringing together around 100 volunteers determined to find answers. They combed the desert, marking anything unusual, bones, electronics, or other items with flags. Each flagged item would then be photographed and documented so law enforcement could investigate further. David Robinson has continued his relentless fight to uncover the truth about his son's disappearance. He has set up a dedicated website and YouTube channel, both designed to share updates, raise awareness, and gather any possible leads. We will put both links in the description so you can check them out. At the time of his disappearance, Daniel was 24 years old, standing at 5'8" and weighing between 150 to 165 pounds. He has black hair, brown eyes, and a distinguishing feature. His right arm is missing from the forearm down. To those who know him, Daniel has always been a happy guy, always smiling and full of adventure. He loves to travel, explore, and see new landscapes. After graduating from the College of Charleston in South Carolina in 2019, Daniel began working as a field geologist for Matrix New World Engineering. The job often took him to remote areas and extreme conditions, but Daniel embraced the challenge. He loved the work and the feeling of adventure it gave him. Some people have seen his missing right hand as a limitation, but to him, it was part of what made him unique, a reminder of his determination to push past obstacles and achieve his dreams. Today, Daniel's case remains classified as an active missing persons investigation. Anyone with information is urged to contact the Buckeye Police Department, Anonymous Crime Stoppers, or separate dedicated tip lines using the phone numbers on your screen. If you have any information, or even the smallest lead, please come forward. Daniel's family has never stopped searching, and they are determined to bring him home. If you have any thoughts about the case, share them in the comments and help keep the conversation alive. Spreading awareness could be the key to finding Daniel. Thank you for watching. If you would like to support the spread of more stories like Daniel's, the best thing you can do is to hit the like button, subscribe to our channel, and perhaps watch another video of ours, like this one about how the internet cracked a cold case police couldn't solve for 36 years, then launched a manhunt that needs your help to catch the killer.